Welcome to episode 162 of the CUInsight Experience. I'm Randy Smith, one of the co-founders of CUInsight.com, and this show is all about taking a deep dive with the leaders of the credit union movement that make it so great. This episode is brought to you by CUES, the credit union industry's leading talent development solutions provider. After listening to our show, be sure to learn more about TalentNEXT, the conference that takes a laser-focused look at smart people strategies for your CU. You can register today at content.cues.org/talentnext. Today, I am having a conversation with Mr. Bob Trunzo. Bob is the Chief Executive Officer at TruStage. You may have known them as CUNA Mutual Group in the past, and a repeat guest on the show. I knew this was going to be a struggle for me to keep within my time constraints with this conversation. I could pick Bob's brain on business and leadership for hours. There was just so much good that I think we will all learn from in this conversation, and I hope you enjoy as much as I did having it. With that said, let's jump right in. Bob, welcome back to the show, my friend.
Randy, it's been a long time. So I was, I'm getting older, so my memory's not as good. How long has it been since the last time we chatted?
It's been a few years. So you were on one of those kind of earlier episodes of the show. So I was excited to have you back. I've seen you since then, but you've got a lot of stuff going on right now. So it seemed like a good time to talk.
It sure is. And again, I just wanted to congratulate you for the outstanding success in the series. And I know I listen occasionally, and certainly, I'm honored to be a part of the guests you have. So I'm looking forward to chatting and catching up.
Me too. For the folks out there who don't know you, or maybe they've made the mistake of not listening to the first episode, could you give us a little background? How'd you get to where you are today? Where'd the career start?
Well, you're really going to test my memory, huh? So I began my career at CUNA Mutual in 2005 and entered the organization. Had jobs of increasing responsibility to becoming president and CEO in 2014. Now, if you ask me, Randy, what my favorite job is in the organization, if you ask anybody in this company what they will tell you my favorite job in the organization, it's not the one I currently have had for 10 years.
I was going to say 10 years. That's an impressive run there. That's for sure. So
I really enjoyed my time, a little bit tongue in cheek, but I really enjoyed my time running the sales organization.
I was just going to ask you. So what was it? It was that was the sales side, right? Okay.
It was the sales side. And, it was incredibly helpful training to sit in the seat I've been fortunate to sit in the last 10 years, because it's your window to the customer. And as I've told everyone, I continually pound on the whiteboard here. Well, actually, they're clear boards now, but I continue to pound on those boards when I say, guys, if we just listen to our customer, they're going to tell us the answer. And my friends in the credit union industry, as you well know, are not shy folks. If you ask, they're going to tell you.
Not only are your customers not shy, I know many of your board members, they're not shy. So
you could include members in that group as well. So
absolutely,
I think that gave me an incredible grounding in not just what's important to credit unions and members, but it gave me a clear grounding in, I think, the value we bring to credit unions and the members. And frankly, on the other side of that, Randy, the value in the performance credit unions and members want from us and need from us.
Absolutely. Just a slight rabbit hole here, because it is kind of a pet peeve of mine. I'm a guy who came up in sales myself. So it always, when people are have that kind of, let's say, where they think sales is a dirty word, I'm like, that's who talks to the customer. So they know the customer well. I think it's such a great way to come up through an organization. So
not only is it not a dirty word, but it provides all the revenue that fuels the organization.
That's exactly it.
And without that, bad things happen.
We don't have the rest of the department. So anyways, we'll get off our soapbox here for a second. So let's talk about the exciting news. Right, we got you back on here. A brand change, a name change, TruStage. What was the motivation, I guess, behind that? I know folks are interested.
We're really excited about the brand change to TruStage, and it's been a long time coming. We've thought about it. We've planned for it extensively, and it really boils down to a couple things, Randy. Number one, we're going to be able with TruStage to really harness the collective power of all of our family of brands into one. Number two, it is going to allow us to consistently grow and manage that brand. And number three, frankly, it's going to take some confusion, a fair amount of confusion out of the space. And if there's anything we can do is stop our friends at CUNA getting calls about bond renewals.
Right. Everybody thinks that CUNA Mutual Group is, that happens all the time, doesn't it? Yeah.
I think it's a really unique opportunity. I'm so proud of our teams here at CUNA Mutual as we embark upon this journey. We've had boatloads of people working on this, and we've had the best of the outside counsel that we can get to help us do this. And everybody is beyond excited for this. And, as I've told everyone, we got to get this right. This is only the first time in 88 years we're going to do it. So, you got to square up and hit the ball.
That's for sure. I was thinking about that with the long history, right? Like to change the brand. But like you said, it seems like it's time and a good thing. When I was knowing that we were going to talk, something that, it still is a leadership podcast. A lot of CEOs listen to this. There's not a bigger brand in our space than CUNA Mutual Group going to TruStage. For the credit union CEO who's sitting out there that's like, maybe thinking their name is a little dated, or like, they were a seg-based financial institution that's now community-based, but they're looking at redoing the brand. Any pitfalls you've come up, or any, like when you're taking a look at it, what's that advice that you've lived and learned here over the past few years?
Yeah, so a quick course on branding 101. So first of all, it's a big effort. It's a big effort, whether it's in our company of 4,000 employees and $5 billion of revenue, or in a credit union. Number two, testing, understanding how you construct your brand, and really getting a clear understanding not only of what your new brand stands for, but how you ladder that brand throughout your activities. And we've tried to very carefully not only pay heritage to CUNA Mutual in formulating this brand, because it's been by any stretch of the imagination, it's been an absolutely terrific ride.
Yeah, absolutely.
And number two, have a brand that's fresh, that's creative, that can reflect trust in our name and can reflect stage in the name, hence TruStage, that allows that member to understand we're going to be there at every point of their financial journey. So that is really, really important. And set up that brand to be ready for the future.
Yeah.
Also, when you're thinking about the brand change, you have to tell consumers or your customers what's not changing. And the success of our company, and certainly the success of our company during my tenure and even before me, let's be honest, was this unwavering commitment we've had to the credit unions and into our consumer. And we've been there. And I'll give you an absolutely perfect example. We haven't talked, Randy, since COVID and since the pandemic. And we all talk about, and let's face it, people think about insurance companies. I pay these premiums. Do I ever use it? I have a car accident. We're arguing about whether we need to pay the bumper or not. Not with Liberty Mutual, our partner, but with other carriers. But I will tell you that I think it's important to understand that during this pandemic, CUNA Mutual, our employees, we were there. Statistic I saw the other day, we paid $80 million plus in COVID-related death claims to beneficiaries. And 70% of that money was paid to beneficiaries and or their families in 10 days or less. So it is, our brand really revolves around trust. We create that trust when we perform and act like we did during a pandemic, during times when our members or our customers need us the most. That's when you have to be there. And it's the same thing. That's the same message. That's the same position that credit unions have to. I mean, you saw what credit unions did during the pandemic and the open hours, the extended, the things they did. we were no different because that is part of our brand. That is who we are. And I know there's been some discussion out there, and I want to address it with you head on because this is the next question you're going to ask me on a follow up. Is you're changing your name? What does that mean to the commitment to the credit union industry? Well, as I said, it's important to tell our partners what's not changing,
Right.
and what's not changing is our strong commitment to the credit union industry. I mean, look, at the end of the day, let's be really clear. If you flip open our financial report, you'll see that 65% plus of our revenue comes from the credit union industry and our members. And you know what? We can grow that. We're excited about growing that, and we need to do that. And so our commitment to credit unions and our commitment to members, I think, gets stronger and frankly gets more clarified during this brand launch. So that's what we're so excited about. The ability to tell the story, to tell a new story, but yet a familiar story.
So that's a question that just popped into my head, and I'm thinking back over the past couple of years, like as we've been back to in-person events and things like that. I've seen Brian, who spends a lot of the time on the road, speaking of CUNA Mutual Group from the main stages a lot of the times. And I feel like so often the last couple of years, he's been talking a lot about, we know the insurance business, but everything else CUNA Mutual Group does, right? So as TruStage, does it also, kind of give you a chance to reintroduce yourself and say, we're a lot more than just a insurance. Like, we're doing more with credit unions than just insurance. To me, it seems like that could be a great opportunity. So,
yeah. Are you talking about Brian Koss or Brian Flynn?
Brian Flynn. Sorry. Yep.
So we all work for Brian in the company. So let me speak on behalf of our CEO, Brian Flynn.
Right. Yeah. Exactly.
I would say a couple things. Brian's exactly right, and I think if you look at where we're driven the company, and frankly, if you look at our three brand pillars that we have on the brand: insurance, investments, technology. The technology piece is just it's absolutely huge, and what we've done with our venture fund, and I know you've had Brian Koss on, or you've talked to Brian Koss. So what we've done with our venture fund, what we're doing with fintech, with products like QNexus and other products that I think are game changers for the industry. And Randy, it's our job in this brand, really, when we talk about experiences. Not only do we want to add new experiences with our fintech partners, with our venture partners, but we want to make those experiences we have now and those experiences for the credit union and the consumer easier and simpler. Because look, at the end of the day, you got to be there 24/7.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I want to dig more into the venture side of things and why that's so important. But when you talk about making it easier and simpler, I've just, my curiosity level, right? Like, it doesn't mean my money's not with credit unions, but I was playing around with the Apple's new savings account that you can just get so easily. It literally took one button click on my phone, and all of a sudden I'm getting a high yield savings account from them, right? Like, it was, through Goldman. But it was that idea of, like, it was frictionless, right? Like, as far as that, and it was instantaneous too. So when we're looking out to the future and future technologies, CUNA Mutual Ventures, you're investing a lot of money in what I view, and to me, it's a very exciting part of it that, like, looking at the future, whether that's with fintech partnerships or, quite honestly, the venture side of things where you're really digging into it. Why is that not only so important for TruStage going forward, but also so important for the industry as a whole?
Well, a couple things. First of all, what we're bringing through our venture fund are technologies, products, platforms that aren't there right now. And I have to tell you, let me be really clear. These venture companies that are driving this innovation, that are driving these product developments, that are thinking about ways to provide frictionless opportunities that we couldn't even imagine. Well, first of all, huge advantage. Number one, they're nimble. Number two, they're able to reverse course. I mean, we're a big company. If we want to reverse course, it's like moving a big ship in the ocean. It takes a while to move it. And number three, many of them aren't regulated.
Right.
So that's an advantage as well, because the regulation tends to add speed and complexity. Now, having said that, why we like this is they're developing end-to-end solutions that are just important at every stage of your life. Like you just gave an example of an end-to-end solution when you press the button on your phone and you got a high savings yield product. I mean, that's the direction we're going now, and that's the direction in the future. I mean, look, the QNexus product, for example. Boom. You have an open, perpetual opportunity for a loan. Okay, you're pre-qualified. I mean, you have to make these things not only end to end. You have to make these experiences. I said things. Let me say experiences. You have to make these experiences not only end to end, not only available at every stage of a consumer's life, but frictionless. No, because I'll tell you what. If you don't do that, Randy, somebody else is, and then you play catch up.
I was thinking about when you said they have the ability to be a little more nimble in the startup phase and, without the regulation. And I was listening to a podcast, I think it was with Kevin Kelly, and the guy said, he gave the analogy of like the guy who invented the car didn't invent the brakes first. Other people came around to invent the brakes, right? Like at first it was just you're going straight ahead and then you put on the brakes afterwards. And I'm like, that's the beauty of startups. You're just going forward, right?
Well, and you talk about frictionless experiences. And if I told you this story, stop me. But I'll tell you a perfect experience that hit home with me. One of my sons was traveling on business and was flying internationally and loved my kids, like we all love our kids, forgot his credit card at home. So by the time he was deplaning from his flight, went on Apple and had a credit card with a pretty large credit limit by the time he got into his Uber to go to downtown. So, I mean, that's what the generations expect. And frankly, that's what credit unions and TruStage have to deliver.
Absolutely. So what has you most excited as you're looking forward? But I seem to bring my crystal ball in more. It's not like I'm not going to ask you 5 or 10 years from now even, but over the next couple of years, things change so quick now. What has you most excited for credit unions overall? And where do you see TruStage playing the role in that?
So I think credit unions have an incredible opportunity. I think we're going through a little bit of issues with banks now in liquidity. I think credit unions are, in my view, more conservatively managed, better managed. And I think there's an opportunity for real safe harbor with credit unions. And we've seen that time and time again. We can trust credit unions. We believe in credit unions. So I think that presents a unique short-term, longer-term opportunity. The other huge opportunity for us is credit unions and TruStage can play such a critical and a more critical role for a consumer or a member in every stage of his or her life. For example, there needs to be really, in this economy and after what we went through during a pandemic, a little bit more time thought about financial planning, a little bit more time about protection for your family, a little bit more time about how to create wealth for your children. And I think all of those are critically important. I think that we all can do a better job of making the financial system, especially for our credit union partners and members, we all can do a better job of making it more inclusive. And I think we've made a lot of progress on that. TruStage, we've been doing a tremendous amount of research on what's next. And I know some of our research really focused on Hispanics and what that generation wants and needs in a financial institution. It's a growing part, very relevant, important part of our growing population. So I just think that it's time to double down and triple down on our commitment to the credit union industry and members. And I would invite credit unions to join us in this effort because I think it's just a terrific opportunity to reinforce what we stand for and what we do.
Yeah, your team has done a fantastic job for that, for sure, in the programs that you've put together. What about challenges? I mean, just real quick as we're moving to some leadership questions that I want to pick your brain on, but what are the biggest challenges you think we face right now as an industry?
I think there's a couple of huge challenges. I always think it's difficult, Randy, to navigate in a uncertain, complex economic environment right now. We've been through a few of these at TruStage, and I am blessed. I don't know how they put up with me, or I don't know why they want to put up with me, but I have a terrific senior staff. So we've been through this before. So there are levers we pull or things we do that are really part of our DNA right now. I think that's important. I also think the second thing I think that's a challenge is we have to continue to figure out, and this is TruStage and this is credit unions, just how we can continue to be relevant to members and consumers. And I use the term relevance all the time because, as you know, there is so much choice now in so many platforms, in so many fashions, that you really don't want to get washed away in this current of choice.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I couldn't agree more. I want to pick your brain from that leadership side. We did some of this the last time you were on the show, and we will link to that one if people want to go listen to it and get even more from Bob. You've had a successful career. How have mentors played into that for you? And I was really interested kind of on the, not only the mentor side, but also like that personal circle side. You're the president of biggest company in our space. Who do you have that still like says, you sure about that, Bob? Like, what are you thinking?
That might be some mentors, but that's certainly my senior team that surrounds me. I mean, we've all been together a while. We have an open relationship. It's not unusual for a few of them to come in. And I know with a few of them, it's an important topic and they want to talk about a decision we're going to make or want to talk about a decision I've made. When they come in and most of us are in, we alternate between being remote and in. But when I know the sentence opens up with, you got a minute, I know it's not going to be a minute.
It's coming.
It's going to be longer. I think so. I think we encourage this interaction of the senior leadership team. We encourage transparency. We have transparency, which has, I think, been a big part of the success that all of us have enjoyed. I know some credit union CEOs and others on the podcast, have had executive coaches. I've had an executive coach, and I've had one for a long time. In fact, Mary's been with me, oh my gosh, it's got to be close to 10 years. And Mary's the one that will say, I'll say something, and she'll look at me and she'll say, really? You don't really mean that. Are you really going to do that? Whenever she says, let's take that apart, I know I've been called on something, Randy.
Yeah. I remember talking to like Brian Schools about an executive coach when he was on the show and things of that nature too. This is maybe getting a little bit in the weeds, but when you decided that you wanted to have that, Jordan had a coach, right? Like, it's, when you were looking for a coach, was it somebody that was referred to you? Was it something that you were searching out? Something specific? If a CEO out there is like, you know what? That could be helpful for me, right?
No, that's a really good question. In my circle of insurance friends, one of my insurance executives that I know real well, a fellow CEO, was using a group out of North Carolina, and he said, look him up. I'll talk to you a little bit about him. And so I read, and I had an opportunity to be led to Mary in that group, who has counseled CEOs and on a routine basis, and we hit it off. And I think the most significant thing is that I had the opportunity with her to have a session almost immediately as I was preparing to be CEO here, a session with the founding partner of her firm, who is very well known in publishing leadership books. And I spent a day with him. It was truly one of the most impactful days I've ever spent with anyone, because I got a board of directors management 101 primer. And I remember writing furiously in this red book I have. And I have to tell you, and I'll be honest with you, almost every board meeting, I go back and figure out what David said. I'll go back and look and go, okay, remember to go over what you went over last time in the board meeting in your president's briefing, because our board is absolutely terrific, but they all have jobs. They all have lives. They leave and they're gone. And they may or may not remember what happened 3-4 months ago. So that's been very helpful. The other thing a coach allows you to do, which is just incredible, is it allows you to have the discussion that you probably can't have or won't have with your senior leadership team and can have and won't have with one of your mentors.
And with sometimes there are those things where I'm sure you're between the board and the senior leadership team, right? That's amazing. Yeah.
Well, and the other thing I think for CEOs that will be helpful to know if they have coaches is, for a couple of years, my coach would have a regular check-in with my direct leadership team.
Oh.
Okay, what are you hearing from Bob? What are you seeing from Bob? Is how do you think we can improve the relationship? What do you think he does well? How's he communicating? Can he be more clear? So she's involved them as well, which I think really helped in a lot of ways the culture I've tried to create, not just at the senior level, but the culture of transparency in the entire organization.
That's pretty amazing. There's a little vulnerability there to let somebody talk to you, the rest of your team too, and come back, but it's amazing. Yeah.
Let me be really clear. If anyone enters into these kinds of jobs and thinks they have the right answers, that's just not the way to approach things. And fundamentally, I mean, if you strip down what you need to accomplish as the president and CEO, whether it's of a credit union or whether it's of a company our size, which, by the way, since 2010, since my leadership team and since we all took over in 2010, we've doubled the size of the company and tripled the size of assets under management. But, there's just a couple things you need to know walking into the enterprise. One is you got to get everybody on the same page on purpose and what you're trying to do. And then during that journey on the alignment phase, you got to listen to a lot of people, and you've got to understand where the organization is. And I think the difficult thing for leaders early in their career is they want to get that feedback. It may not be what they're thinking. And then it's like, oh my God, what do I do? And so, that's where the mentoring and coaching of young leaders come in. But I think one of the things that has really been gratifying for me at TruStage, and certainly gratifying over the last 10 years, is this organization's belief in our purpose and in our strategy. I mean, it's the old line the basketball coach says you can't coach height.
Right.
Well, I can't. I mean, this is just so ingrained in how we operate, in what we do, and how our leadership teams manage, that it's been a big, big part of our success at the company.
Oh, that's good. I have other questions. I'm going to be respectful of your time here, but I feel like I could do a whole show with you on like what you learned and wrote in that notebook on like how to work with boards and how you've made that your own over the years. And my guess is it'd be listened by every CEO out there. So,
well, and Randy, I can also read in my book the things that I probably didn't do right either.
That's exactly it, right?
So there's, it's just like there may be two chapters: what's gone right and what probably hasn't gone right. And I'll be happy to come back. Hey, Randy, our next visit will be chapter 1, chapter 2.
All right. That's exactly it. What I learned and what you don't need to learn on your own, because I already made that mistake, right? So I love it. A quick question. Probably about a year ago, I listened to a podcast and the question was like, what's the greatest investment you've ever made that, or when you look back, that you made in your career? And the example they gave was Warren Buffett said Dale Carnegie courses. So when you think back on your career, is there that investment that you've made that you're like, yeah, that was transformational?
Yeah, I'll tell you what, TruStage made that investment on behalf of me. Mine was an investment of time. 53 or 54 years old, I went back to school and did a executive program at Kellogg, at the Kellogg School in Northwest. And what was really helpful for me were two things. Number one, exposure to other CEOs and other leaders. I will brag that my partner and I won the business simulation that went a year. In fact, I still
Congratulations.
I still have the letter opener on my desk at home. But number two, Kellogg, Wharton, Harvard, Stanford all have just a terrific faculty. And we just had access to some of the best faculty at Kellogg. And I remember sitting there. Tim Calkins wrote Calkins on Branding, probably the preeminent expert on branding. And I remember sitting there in class. Calkins talked about the difficulty in messaging a family of brands. Talked a lot about what made great brands. and talked about the power of a single brand and how you ladder that single brand and how that single brand stands for something. I started to think back then, I remember this, because after I came home, I was counting the number of, okay, CUNA Mutual Retirement, CUNA Mutual this, CUNA Mutual that. And we just had access to those kinds of professors that made the educational experience highly relevant to what you do day in and day out, especially when you're working.
Yeah, you're still working it. Now you're seeing that, seems like what you were just talking about come to fruition today with TruStage, right? So that's pretty cool. A question for you. You've mentioned quite a few times on the show, and the last time too, I know how highly you think of your leadership team. If you take that all the way back 10 years ago, right? Or over 10 years ago when you were building out, some of them I'm sure were there already, but what are you looking for? Like if you have to add a person, how about that today to your leadership team? Is there something that you're looking for or that like, and then on the flip side of that, is there a no-go you're in that conversation, you're like, oh no, they're not part of us, right?
Yeah. It's interesting. In this whole podcast, you haven't heard me use the word I very much. It's always been what we've accomplished, what our leadership team has accomplished. So there's a couple things we look for. One is, well, first of all, what I look for are people, this is going to sound trite and smart alecky, but I look for people that have skills that not only complement the team and or me, but I look for people that might be smarter than me in a number of areas. And I'm not afraid to admit that.
Absolutely.
Number two, we want team players who are transparent and who can communicate. And we shy away from people that aren't collaborative and they use the word I a lot.
Yeah, I can say that. That's good advice right there. Yeah.
Well, and the other thing, the testimony to, I think, the success of a team is if you go back and you look at my senior leaders, there's two things that'll strike you. Well, three things. Number one, there hasn't been a lot of change other than retirement. I still don't talk to my good friend and wingman, Jim Power, who retired a couple years ago. Number two, there's a huge element of not just diversity, but diversity of opinion. And number three, some of them have been together with me since my journey in the sales organization. And they've earned the opportunity. They just earned where they are right now. It's very significant. And I'm really, really proud of them. And frankly, Randy, I couldn't be more proud of this organization. If you look at what we've done over the last couple of years through the pandemic, it's just been an extraordinary effort by everyone.
That's amazing. A couple quick questions before we move on towards the end of the show and have a little bit of fun with the rapid fire questions, but that were on my mind. One was from earlier. You mentioned like when you were talking about the venture side and the startups being able to move quick. How do you, as a large organization with a large history, a very long history, how do you move that ship? How do you stay nimble? How do you make sure that you're able to pivot as things change?
Timely, great question. A couple things. Number one, we've improved quite a bit at that. And I'm proud of the progress we've made. As the CEO, it's never quite good enough, and we can always do better. So there are a couple things I think. We have employed agile methods in the company, which allows us to make decisions quicker, agile type management skills. When we think about how we approach a project, we generally implement slices of a project, which allows us to go faster, allows us to change. And quite frankly, we've instilled such a growth mindset in TruStage right now. And if you look at our growth over the course of the last 3 to 5 years, the team has done just a terrific job growing not just our core products, but growing the entire enterprise. That's led to kind of like hey, let's pick up the pace kind of culture. And I like that. Now, you never go fast enough for the CEO. You never go fast enough for the leadership team. But that's been a big improvement, I think. And that's a big improvement that I don't own. That's a big improvement the entire organization owns.
Yeah, that makes a big difference. I've been interested to watch over the past couple of years how quick people had to move in COVID. seems like it made people maybe realize that they could move quicker, like make decisions on the fly better and things like that. I don't know if that's true or not, but an observation from the blimp level, right? So was there anything, before we move on to having a little fun in the rapid fire question, any question that you were hoping I asked, but I went down too many rabbit holes and didn't ask it?
I think you got everything. The one thing I'd like to just leave before we go into the rapid fire, the one thing I'd like to leave the CEOs and others who are listening to this is just, I'd like to underscore two things. The importance of really listening to your members and the importance of really doing the consumer research that is going to allow you to not just shape what you're doing now, your offerings, how you run your business, what you're thinking about, but that research ought to shape your strategy for the future. We've got all these books about how to work for a great company, how to run a great company, how to be successful. And I've always been in the camp that if you take care of your customers, if you take care of your members and your credit union partners, and you listen to them, and you listen to them carefully, and you don't dominate the conversation, but you listen to them, they're going to tell you where you need to go. They're going to tell you what's important to them, and they're going to tell you what they're thinking about for their future. And I think that's really critical, and I think that's what we do here. That's been a change in the organization here, because we solicit diverse opinions. Our whole workforce, the profile of our workforce has changed over the years to not only have more leaders, have more diversity of color and race in the organization, but thought.
Yeah. Yep. One last rabbit hole before we move on. You mentioned like the leadership books and things of that nature. Many of the books that you and I grew up on may not have held water very well. There might be some nuggets we took out of them, but like, what do you think today makes a good CEO or a good leader? And has that changed over the course of your career?
I think there are some elements of those old leadership management books that are still very, very relevant today. But I do think there's a couple things that are crucial for a CEO to succeed now and into the future. One is a heightened sense of importance around the ability to communicate, and the ability to communicate transparently and clearly. And I think the second biggest thing is the ability of CEOs to have one foot in the present and then have another foot or your eyes over the horizon. Because I just think the success, and I'll go back to what one of my professors said at Kellogg, said, Bob, you could do a good job managing your company. Great CEOs have the ability to keep one foot in the present and an eye over the horizon for the future, to plan for and anticipate what's coming and what's next. And those, I think, are two critical elements. I think right now, coming out of COVID and this particular time frame right now, this has been, even for experienced CEOs, I think this has been the most challenging time to manage and lead a company in the last 10 years. And let me repeat again, I've been doing this with a terrific team and great employees. I think the challenges, it's no surprise to me that a lot of CEOs retired right after COVID.
Yeah. Oh, no. We're still continuing to see it, right? I
mean, you mentioned earlier, frankly, a challenge in the credit union industry is you're going to have a lot of very, very talented leaders who are going to retire. And let me talk about that for just a brief second. Retirement, succession planning, change is good. Change is healthy for the organization. And I think, and I've often said this, and I've said this to my leadership team here, you have to know when it's the right time to exit as a CEO. That kind of change empowers the organization. You plan for that change. You thoughtfully plan for that change. You execute that change. And I think that's good. And I think you're going to see a lot of that. You're going to see a lot of that in the future, simply because of the ages of CEOs and the fact that the pandemic took a lot out of people.
Absolutely. Yeah. It's a big conversation in my house with Jill and her organizational humanity.
I bet.
So
I bet Jill's not lacking for things to do these days.
She is not. No, that's for sure. So, well, let me move on. I want to be respectful of your time. Could keep talking to you for hours, my friend. I really do appreciate this. Just a few rapid fire questions. I added a couple new ones since the last time you were on the show because I didn't want to ask you the same thing. What was the first job? First job ever?
Paint department, Sears Hardware. I can mix a really mean indigo blue.
That is amazing. When was the last time you were amazed by something, either professionally or personally?
2 weeks ago when I talked to my son and was so proud of him completing a big private equity transaction.
Very nice. Congratulations to your son. Let me ask you this, then that kind of ties right into it. So thanks for setting this up for me. You know, oftentimes when people to get to the CEO chair, they put a lot into their career, often at the detriment of personal relationships, family. Any hacks that you've picked up along the way? You got an amazing family that you could share for a young CEO to make sure there's some sort of balance in life, I guess?
Yeah, you really got to thoughtfully plan for that balance in life. And I would tell you, when you're with your family, you have to be present in the moment. And I have not really I've gotten better over time, mainly because I have a bunch of people who call me on it. And,
Very nice.
and we have, the same way that we will challenge each other at TruStage happens in my family. And let me be really clear, I am not the CEO in my family.
I don't think any of us are. So you know I'm not. So the last one that I always just want to make sure to throw out there, you mentioned a couple books earlier in the show. Any book that you think everybody should be reading right now, or that book you still are like, if you haven't read this, you sure should?
I regret to tell you I'm not reading anything right now because I don't have any time right now with
I was going to say
launch and we've got an incredible amount of activity going on. And and now when I do pick something up, it's fiction, so I can get lost in a book. But very challenging, very busy time right now. And like I've told everyone, we do this one time in 88 years, so we got to get it right.
Well, I thank you, my friend, for taking the time out of that crazy busy schedule to have this conversation with me. Any final thoughts you want to leave with the listeners? It's all yours.
Just continued success. Really, all of us here believe very strongly in the system. That credit unions are well positioned, and I have to tell you, I have never been more excited about the future for TruStage. We really want to be on that journey with our credit unions, and we want to be on that journey with the members. And we think there's no one better equipped or situated to do that because we know them and we care about them and they trust us, and we will do the right thing for them.
Well, thank you so much, Bob, for being here again today and taking the time out of that schedule. And I wish you and your team and everybody at TruStage just an amazing amount of success on this launch and the rebrand. So
thank you, Randy. It's great to see you again. And let's not make it as long as between podcasts. Okay?
I agree completely. Thank you, sir. A few things before we go. Make sure to check out CUIs and be sure to learn more about TalentNEXT in the show notes or at CUIs.org. They are a longtime partner of CUInsight.com and the podcast, and I am grateful for their support to allow us to have this much fun doing what we do. Also, subscribe to the CUInsight Experience on your favorite podcast player. We are on them all, and if you are looking for your next read, your summer read, or a book mentioned on the show, a quick Google of the CUInsight Experience podcast book list, and your next read is on its way from Amazon. Last, but certainly not least, I want to thank you all for listening. You all rock, and I appreciate the kind words that come in about the show and the support you all show us. Have a great day, friends. Be well.